am curious about your thoughts on gender neutral that you're hearing. I don't.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm not minimizing anyone. I'm sincerely with love exploring what this is. So if anyone out there is watching this and they're gender neutral, I respect you very much. I'm just learning what this is. And so I am asking a zoologist, what are your thoughts on it? And how do you think we got here? Or have we always had this in our lives? And all that kind of falls under that is, or in that category is homosexuality, transsexual, just all the list that we have. What do you talk to me about that?
Well, interestingly, I discovered I've done a lot of traveling to study human beings. I don't just sit at home. I've been to 107 countries now. And during those travels, I found that in many tribal cultures, people accept unusual sexual tendencies. I mean, they don't look upon them as they're just part of life. They often have special names given to them, but they're not derogatory. They're just simply descriptive. I can't remember them all now, but I know that in the South Pacific and in various other places, I came across cultures where any variety of sexual activity was acceptable. But I think, if I may, I'd just like to explain to you, I think, what's happened to sexual relations. I have to do it very briefly. But you see, when we lived in small tribes, which we did for 1 million years, I mean, we are a tribal animal. That was what forged our personality as human beings. We lived in small tribes where the men went off hunting, and they went off hunting because they were expendable. You see, you can lose a few men from your tribe, but you can't afford to lose any women because there are so few of you in those days that producing offspring is enormously important. And so if one gender had to hunt, it better be the males. And so the men became specialized as risk takers and hunters. And the women stayed in the settlement and were in charge of everything else. They were at the center of it. The men were peripheral. They were very good hunters. They became much braver than other monkeys and apes as hunters. And they became good with weapons and technology and engineering as it is today. But the women did everything else. And then something awful happened as far as the women are concerned. Urban life developed. Instead of living in small tribes, we lived in bigger and bigger settlements until we were living in cities. And what happened now was that the men weren't peripheral. They weren't going off to hunt. They were hunting contracts and business deals in the center of the city. So now the men were in the center of society and the women were out in the suburbs having children. So what had happened is becoming urbanized had been very unfair to women because women were actually better at everything except hunting. And I've always said that no men should be allowed in politics at all because male egos and male risk-taking take over. And because males are genetically more risk-taking than women, they take silly risks and do silly things and start wars. And so in my world, all politics would be run by women because they had to run our tribal societies for 1 million years, and they were at the center of it and organized everything. And that's what they're really good at, everything except hunting. But when I say that, I should explain that it's not 100%. I mean, there are some women who are better hunters than some men, and some men who are better organized. It's an overlap. It isn't black and white. It's just a slight difference between the two. But that difference exists. And what happened was that, of course, women in the last 100 years or so began to say, this is not right. We're being pushed into a subordinate role in urban society. And this has gone on for thousands of years. I mean, it was in ancient Greece, ancient Rome. The men were always dominant in the urban world. And women were unfairly treated for several thousand years until suffragettes started complaining, and then it developed into feminists. And now women are saying, what amuses me is that feminists say we want a New Deal. Actually, what they want is their birthright. What the feminists are asking for and are now getting is equality based on the ancient tribal origins of our species, because they were in the center of society then, and now they're moving back into the center of society more and more. And this is the correct role for them. They are much better at organizing than men, and much less prone to risk taking, which is now. Having said that, let me now say something that's all in favor of women, but in favor of men. Risk taking has one special quality. If you go to the place where inventions are recorded, you find nearly all inventions are by men, and that's because an invention is a risk. You're trying something new and different. So men do have a new role, which is based on their ancient hunting skills, which required risk-taking if it was going to work at all. And today, that takes the form of inventions and inventing things, where men are slightly better than women. Only slightly, but a little bit. And so what is happening, and it's, for me, watching it, it's very satisfying, because I'm seeing society in the last 100 years reorganize itself to fit with what kind of animals we really are, which is tribal animals with a division of labor. There's no dominant sex. It's a partnership of specialization. And when I made a series, the sequel to Human Animal that you mentioned, called The Human Sexes, in that one, my key phrase was equal but different. There are differences between the sexes.